Good evening. Good evening. How are you? Thank you. Never got applauded like that before de Blasio became the mayor. See? I'm very, very sorry that I'm late, but I had to give a speech on cybersecurity, and when I finished, I went to Central Park and had a cigar. I was rudely interrupted by a New York City police officer who informed me that you can no longer smoke a cigar in Central Park. And he was about to give me a summons. But then he said, "Oh, you're former Mayor Giuliani. I think I'll give you a pass." He was about to leave when he noticed my 16-ounce bottle of Coke. A cola, not Coke, Coca-Cola. Had it been Coke, he might have ignored it. But since it was Coca-Cola, well, I had to fill out all kinds of forms. My doctor had to call him. Hence, I was late. So I rushed here in a horse-drawn carriage. The driver was screaming on the way, "Screw them, screw them, screw them," something like that. But it's wonderful to be here at the Manhattan Institute. I owe a great debt of gratitude to the Manhattan Institute because they gave me all of my very best ideas when I ran for mayor and when I was mayor. All the bad ideas were mine, all the good ideas were theirs. And it's true. They gave me the broken windows theory on crime. They gave me the idea of welfare to work, and we removed 600,000 people from the welfare rolls. 600,000 people. 500,000 with jobs, 100,000 sent to New Jersey. Christie is going to get so angry. But this will be good for him to show he has a sense of humor. Charter schools, which we started. Charter schools, which we started. Mayor Bloomberg expanded, and Mayor de Blasio has attempted to destroy. But it's not going to happen, because what you started in the Manhattan Institute has worked out so well, it has such strong support, that charter schools are here to stay. And now, we move on to the real answer, which is vouchers. And you actually gave me the idea to reduce taxes and reduce the budget. The first tax reduction that I did was the hotel occupancy tax. It was only about $40 or $50 million reduction. It was all we could get from the Democrat-controlled legislature and city council. And my deputy mayor, Peter Powers, walked into my office and he said, "Mayor, you just set a record for tax reduction in New York." And I said, "Peter, that can't be. It's only $60 million in a $30 billion budget." He said, "Well, you set a record because you're the first mayor to ever reduce taxes in New York City." But it was your article about the hotel occupancy tax and what it would do, and Mr. Laffer's analysis of how when you reduce some taxes, you actually recover more money, that brought that about. So we cut the hotel occupancy tax in half. We collected $100 million from the lower hotel occupancy tax, and that led to another $4 billion in tax reductions. So those are a few of the things that I owe to the Manhattan Institute. It's a few of the things that I owe to the Manhattan Institute. There's a lot more. And what I did for New York City, Jeb Bush did in a bigger way, on a bigger stage, for the state of Florida. John Ellis Bush was the 43rd governor of the state of Florida. He is the only Republican to serve 2 full 4-year terms. I also share, in some ways, that in common with him, since I'm the only Republican, well, I'm actually the first Republican elected in 25 years, and I'm the only one to remain a Republican in 70. So I feel a real bond with Jeb. He was elected with 61% of the Hispanic vote. Wow! Come on! Just could be that our party could win an emerging vote, emerging group, get a big vote, change the nature of politics. Oh well. I hope we can. He got 14% of the African American vote. And he was an exceptional governor. His son, George P. Bush, is currently the GOP nominee for Texas General Land Office, which, now that I spend most of my time in Texas, I can tell you is a very important office. His son, John Ellis Bush, Jr., who is the most intelligent member of the family, he is, works in commercial real estate in Miami and was chairman of Florida Young Professionals for Rudy. Governor Bush is credited with making sweeping reforms in so many areas. He reduced taxes by $19 billion. He cut the size of state government by 6.5%. He brought Florida their best bond rating ever. He placed greater emphasis on standardized testing. He eliminated, Herman Badillo is here, who helped me do this, but he eliminated social promotion for 3rd graders. He was a strong advocate for vouchers and charter schools, and he has what I regard as a very sensible, very intelligent, and very wise position on immigration for a country of immigrants and for a city that wouldn't be here without immigrants. Now, there's a lot of speculation that he may run for president. He's got a very, very big problem to overcome. He's got a record of success. Well, we haven't elected a president like that in a while. He actually accomplished things. Reduced taxes, ran a government, was an excellent governor. My goodness, wouldn't it be remarkable if we had a president in the White House who actually had done something before he became president of the United States? Since politics, Jeb has started a nonprofit think tank, Foundation for the Future, to help drive sound public policy ideas. He serves as co-chair of the Barbara P. Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. His foundation has partnered up with the James Madison Institute, a free market think tank, to work on issues of excellence in education. He has a very diverse personal history, working in the Texas banking industry, international finance in South America, real estate development in Florida, a minority partner in the NFL football team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. He speaks fluent Spanish, and he happens to be one terrific guy. And I think he is well deserving of the Alexander Hamilton Award from this institute, because you think like him and he thinks like you do, and he would make one heck of a leader. Let's hope we get the chance to find out.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you for that very generous introduction, Mayor. It is a joy to be with you all. As you may know, the Manhattan Institute honored Mayor Giuliani with the Alexander Hamilton Award in 2006 for his extraordinary leadership in this great city. And I know that many people in this room, I hope you're at least focused on the November midterm elections. Some others, mostly in the media, are focused on the election beyond that. You know, there's been a lot of speculation about what may happen in the future, and I've been candid that I'm weighing my options. But I'd like to take this opportunity tonight to confirm that, if asked, I would be willing to chair the Rudy 2017 campaign against Bill de Blasio. Let's do this, Mayor. We'll have to work a little bit on this. I'm spending a lot of time in Texas part, but we can work on that. Congressman Ryan, Tom Smith, congratulations on your awards. It is a joy and privilege to share the stage with you this incredible evening. And I was listening to the introducers, all of whom were spectacular. One thing that Art Laffer said that really kind of warmed my heart was that he moved from the west side of California to some part of Tennessee, and the savings, his $15,000 savings that he got by moving there, allowed him to own a mobile home in Tennessee. Art, you're living the dream, brother. Congratulations. My friend, you could have moved all the way across to Florida and gotten a much better deal. To the Manhattan Institute Board of Trustees, its chairman, Paul Singer, and Larry Mohn, thank you so much for the invitation to join you tonight and for this honor. I have long admired the work of the Manhattan Institute and its development and advancement of good policy that fosters economic choice and individual responsibility. And I'm going to get in a little trouble here because I'm nerdy enough to actually read the City Journal on a regular basis. And I love the works of a lot of your scholars. That does not mean that all the scholars aren't spectacular. The ones I want to mention in particular, though, are the ones that I've learned a lot from over the years. Saul Stern on education, for sure. You got this new whippersnapper, Ovik Roy, who is killing it on Obamacare. It is spectacular. I really look forward to my weekly nourishment about how this is a disaster. We all know that, but backed by solid facts to provide kind of alternatives for where we need to go from here. John McWhorter on race, we had him down in Tallahassee speaking. He was spectacular. You have Rick Baker, my great friend, who's the mayor of St. Petersburg, who's an adjunct scholar, I guess, and I hope that you can convince him to spend more time because he's a really solid intellectual, but he's also a practitioner. I mentioned the City Journal. Steve Malanga has done spectacular work long before. It must be frustrating, Steve, to be talking about the looming disaster, you know, for like 25 years, and then all of a sudden the disaster comes and you look like you're a genius. But in fact, there were a lot of people reading your work beforehand, and that is why, in some ways, Florida is now AAA rated. Because we saw the disasters in other states that many people in this room wrote about, and we changed our policies to create greater reserves and to focus on making sure we had recurring revenues to pay for recurring expenses. And we focused on the long-term things, and we lessened our debt relative to the size of our economy. And Florida, during my tenure, I think was the only state that went to AAA status. So Steve, I'm giving you credit for that. So don't think that ideas don't have consequences, and don't think the work of the Manhattan Institute isn't important, because its core mission is perhaps even more important today than it was at the inception of this great institution in 1980. And that's because the United States is in trouble. Our country is no longer the most socially and economically mobile country in the world. Far from it. According to the Pew Research Institute, if you take 100 Americans that are at the bottom 20 percentile in income, only 4 of them will rise to the top 20% during their lifetimes. 70% of those born in the bottom 40% of Americans will be stuck there for their entire lives. The American dream is slowly being replaced by something economists call stickiness at the ends. Those born wealthy will stay there in many cases, and those born poor will do the same. And those in the middle, the group that has defined who we are as a nation for 2 centuries, are shrinking and they're feeling the squeeze. Today, for the first time, over the longest period of time, a majority of Americans believe that their children will have less opportunity than what they had. If our people are not rising, our nation will not rise. There are those who believe that the solution is as simple as taking more from the successful and doling out the proceeds to the less successful. It doesn't work that way, and it never has. The federal government has spent $15 trillion on anti-poverty programs in the 50 years since President Johnson declared the war on poverty. By some estimates, if you include state and local monies, today we spend up to $1 trillion a year on poverty and income assistance programs. Yet the percentage of people living in poverty has remained flat for 40 years, and we're seeing increasing intergenerational poverty. This nation is confronting a crisis of opportunity. The question is, how can we once again enjoy an economic climate where people can move up and where American experiences a rejuvenation of sustained economic growth? By the way, if we decided as a country to put aside some of our differences and said as a nation we were going to grow at 2% more than what the projected kind of 1.5% growth is, we would create a Germany of incremental growth, $4.7 trillion of additional economic activity in the 10th year. And for those that think we can tax our way to prosperity, $1 trillion of recurring revenue at the state and local and federal government level would come from that kind of sustained economic growth over and above what is being projected today. Mayor de Blasio, Barack Obama, Elizabeth Warren, all your favorite progressive, no one has an exotic form of tax that comes close to $1 trillion of revenue. So high sustained economic growth should be our focus, and we are a country that could actually make this happen. But it requires changes in how we go about doing things. Our regulation structures need to change to become outcome-based, less incumbent-driven. They need to be fairer, and they certainly need to be a lot more practical. Our taxes need to be lower, simpler, pro-family, and pro-job creation. As George Gilder has eloquently written on taxes and societal rules, the less the noise, the greater the acceleration of innovation occurs, which is the source of sustained high economic growth. We need to reform our entitlement and healthcare programs, which now crowd out funding, as Chairman Ryan knows so well, that make it harder for us to invest in the long-term things that create economic growth, like infrastructure and research and development. And I would add, as someone who lives in Florida, wouldn't it be nice to have a space program again so we weren't dependent upon the Russians to send our folks up to the space station? We need an energy policy based on American ingenuity, American technology, and North American resources. The United States is energy secure, but we could lead the world if we had policies that backed it up rather than acting as a deterrent for its development. And when it comes to the state of the American family, Paul Ryan has it right, and I applaud your courage to take a stand as it relates to the fact that not only is it important to deal with poverty, it's also to recognize that the one thing that we know, and the scholars of the Manhattan Institute have made this clear, is that a loving family taking care of their children in a traditional marriage will create the chance to break out of poverty far better than any of the government programs that have been created. To create this sustained economic growth model, we need to fix our broken immigration system and rebuild one that is economically driven and true to our immigrant heritage. For the life of me, I have a hard time understanding why people are fearful of our own heritage, our own history, which is unique in the world. This country is special in so many ways, and one of the reasons is that we have a set of shared values that defines national identity. Not where we came from, whether it's in Florida or New York or some far-off land, but a set of shared values. And the rules are you come to this country, you pursue your dreams, you create value for yourself and your families and others, and great things happen to you and to our country. Why would we ignore that at a time when we need to restart and rejuvenate our economy? It makes no sense to me. And by the way, for the nerdy policy wonks out there, and I know half the crowd is, which really warms my heart, once settled immigrants start more businesses, they form more families, they have more children, they have a higher percentage of home ownership than their native-born counterparts. An effective immigration policy based on an economic strategy would be not all of the solution, but a significant part of the solution to create a high-growth strategy to lift our spirits and make us hopeful and optimistic again. And finally, there is nothing more critical to our long-term economic security than a wholesale transformation of our education system. The latest results from the Program for International Student Assessment, better known as PISA, only confirm the urgency of our charge. U.S. teenagers have now fallen behind their counterparts in Ireland, Poland, and even Vietnam in math and science. Between 2003 and 2012, the United States flatlined its results, but many other countries have made a command focus on this. It is a higher cultural value, and there have been more resources placed in this, and they have higher expectations of their children, and they've gotten a better result. So for those that think it's because poverty is the reason why we haven't had the educational gains, I guess we should really look to the wealthy countries like Vietnam to determine whether we should be successful or not. Come on. God has given every child the ability to learn, and it's up to us to organize ourselves in a 21st century way to assure that they do. And if we do that, this country will take off. This country will soar. If you believe, like I do, and I hope and pray you do, that every child has the capacity to learn, that means that the classroom is where we will create opportunity or end it. If education is to be the great equalizer, which everybody talks about, that means that every child must have access to a great school and to great teachers. Today in America, that does not exist. Failing schools result in the reverse. Students who drop out of school without achieving a high school diploma are likelier to possess a lifelong dependency on government, likelier to be unable to provide for their families, and likelier to end up in our correctional system. Thankfully, there are proven reforms that are being implemented in growing pockets throughout our nation that we know work. Key to improving education is the widespread embrace of more accountability, not less, more school choice, not less, the end of social promotion across the board, not just in New York City and in Florida, but across the country. This insidious idea that we're worried about the self-esteem of little Johnny rather than whether Johnny can read, when we know that in fourth grade, if they can't read, it's hard to be able to calculate math and science and expect them to continue to progress, is ridiculous. We're so politically correct in our country that we can't change that, even that, but yet there are only a handful of states, Florida leading the way, that have done that. And we need higher academic standards. And I apologize for this, but I believe high, lofty expectations are a huge part of making sure that children learn. And whether they're Common Core state standards or higher standards in general, we cannot pull back and dilute and dumb down our standards. Assuring that more than a quarter of our children are truly college or career ready, which is what we have today. We spend more per student than any country in the world other than Luxembourg. I've said it once without using the caveat, and I got PolitiFact caught me on that. I apologize. But in a right to rise society, success is not measured by the haves and have-nots. It's measured by whether the next generation is prepared to pursue earned success. And this is why I want to especially thank the Manhattan Institute and its impressive array of experts and scholars for their strong commitment and contributions to education reform. I'm grateful that we started the journey of reform a little bit earlier than many states, and we have a good database, and so researchers from across the country have been able to follow the Florida story. And Marcus Winters and Jay Green did one of the first studies on Florida's efforts to end social promotion. In 2002, we started on this journey with something like 31% of our kids functionally illiterate in third grade. And had nothing changed, 31% of our kids would have been held back in my election year. Not a smart move if nothing had changed. But the fact was that the whole system changed because we had this, I'm not kidding, barrier between third and fourth grade. We made a huge commitment to early childhood literacy and a focus on this. And what Winners in Green found was that when we designed this policy, the kids that were held back showed gains in the first year compared to those that had special exemptions going to 4th grade. And that in the second year, those gains got bigger. And now the same talented group of scholars are looking at a 10-year anniversary to see where it stands. And my guess is what they'll find is if you have high, lofty expectations and you create remediation around kids that are struggling, you'll get a better result. But what we can't do is be so politically correct to pass them along and expect that there'll be some kind of immaculate conception version of education to think that these children will learn. That's not how it works. I hope Cardinal Dolan is still not with us. No. Thanks to the Manhattan Institute, a smart group of people, scholars from the outside, came in and validated a politically difficult policy that we proved to be right. The power of ideas and the power of scholarship truly matters. And it's not just about the ideas. It's not just about the nerdy policy journals. It's about people. Hundreds of thousands of young people in Florida now have a chance to achieve earned success because we have begun the journey of transforming our education system. 2 months ago, I got an email from a woman named Marianne Bryant who lives in Inverness, Florida. Marianne has been an email buddy of mine, and you all could do the same if you like. JEB@jeb.org is my email address. I always gave it out when I was governor. And as such, she would tell me during this time of no social promotion in the first year, her child, Katie, is autistic, and she was worried that her child would be held back kind of in perpetuity between 3rd and 4th grade. Katie is turning 20 years old this month, and she, as I said, has autism. Her mom emailed me when she was in 2nd grade. And from that time, we've developed a personal relationship, and the opposite has actually happened in Marianne's concerns turned into a delight in many ways, because the new policy was the beginning of Katie setting her own goals to succeed. And today, Katie is thriving. She graduated from high school last year with honors, and now as a sophomore at Stetson University in Florida. Don't think that what you do does not matter. So, to conclude, here's what I believe. If we stay our current course with our tepid economic growth and the deep pessimism that this country believes that we're on the wrong track, and the seeming inability to solve these structural problems, to turn problems into opportunities, our future is not that bright. Thankfully, there is a clear path for the United States to once again be the indispensable nation once again, as we have always been. That starts at home with a world-class education system and a vibrant, dynamic, and prosperous economy. An economy that creates jobs and creates hope. An economy that once again is the envy of the world. An economy that stands like our greatest success stories as an example that others can follow. We can definitely be that America again. It will require solution-oriented leadership that has been lacking, particularly in Washington, D.C. over these last 6 years. But it is surely within our grasp. Thanks again for honoring me with this incredible award, and thank you for your commitment to the Manhattan Institute. God bless you all.